Alright, so I know I spend a lot of time on this channel talking about, extremely weird and obscure boom shoots and such, and for that I am kind of sorry. I mean, I'm not actually sorry, but I do feel a little bad, talking about this extremely specific subgenre of FPS games in most of my videos. Believe me, I do enjoy other games too. More on that in the next video. But for now, I wanted to take this holiday season to enjoy myself and cover something that I actually really enjoy. Well, I recently enjoyed anyways. Selaco, which is my current boom shoot of hyperfixation choice. And to cut to the chase here, I really like this game. Enough so to recommend it regardless of price or your personal taste in games. Go, buy this game, seriously, for $24, usually cheaper on sale, it is absolutely worth it, even in its half-finished state. What is here now is more than worth the price of admission, trust me. Then again, maybe I'm just saying all this because I am personally slighted to this game because it is just one giant collection of things that I personally enjoy. Pixelated boom shooty goodness? Check. Open-ended levels with tons of secrets and replay value? Check. Weird GZ Doom engine nonsense that boggles the mind? Check. Yes, you heard me right, this game that is ostensibly modernized with all of the modern sensibilities that a modern gamer could ask for, I said modern 3 times, is built on some jank-ass id-based fork. Again, GZ Doom to be specific. This is something that the game proudly wears on its sleeve, evidenced merely by opening the game. But if it didn't, the GZ Doom jank is buried so deep behind the mask that people, or at least most people, if you just showed them gameplay without telling them that this is based off of Doom's code, they probably wouldn't know. But as someone who has dabbled with quite a few total conversion mods in the past, many of which I've had the pleasure of covering on this channel, I'd like to say that I am decently familiar with this engine's jank. None of its grander inner machinations that you can find from digging around in the code, just vibes. If you've played a lot of classic Doom, then you'll probably pick up on a few things. One of the big ways that I picked up on was the way that physics objects interact with the player. Because, while yes, nearly every world object is rendered in these beautifully done 3D voxel art, they still move around like standard Doom props. This is especially apparent if you push something around. Just the way you grind up against it feels very familiar, although that might just be me going crazy. There are of course other things too, like the console being literally unchanged from the standard GZ Doom, although that one might be able to just get chalked up to an engine limitation. Regardless, the game's presentation is very slick, and that's a really good word to describe the whole game actually. Slick. Everything feels just so smooth. If we're going to use a painted car analogy here, you can liken Doom to an old muscle car. Undoubtedly old and antiquated by modern standards, but there's no doubt that it's a magnificent piece of machinery. A true American classic by all means. Selaco, by comparison, is a modern sports car. Fast, lightweight, and a head-turner no doubt. But unlike an actual comparison between a modern sports car and a muscle car, both games here have the same engine. Honestly making all of this witchcraft and sorcery here all the more impressive. Anyways, I think I've rambled on for long enough now though. I might as well, play the damn game now. Like I said, this was my first playthrough. But even still, I decided to play on the very hard difficulty, Captain as it's called. If you're like me and you've played many shooters of this type, then you'll probably be fine. I know I technically called this game a boom shoot earlier, but for many reasons we'll discuss that is a little disingenuous. Again though, I'm getting ahead of myself here, so for right now let's just get on with it. This video is gonna be, well, at least a little different from my usual shit. Mainly because I barely paid attention to the story. Actually zero attention if I could. The entirety of it is delivered through these in-game data logs that you find scattered around the levels, which are entirely optional reads. The only time I ever really went digging around in them was for keypad codes and such. Really, if there's one thing that the game doesn't do the best at, it's this. When you click the play button, you get barely any kind of given circumstances. Best I could do is that you take control of Dawn, some person of mild importance on the space colony of Selaco, and also obviously the main character in the game. The Earth was destroyed some time ago and everyone lives out here in space, which is something. Look, alright, you boot into the game, you're in some hospital, so running off of that I can assume we've been injured, but you know what, it doesn't matter. Honestly, I'm tired of embarrassing myself here. You wake up in hospital and then shoot all these guys. There you go, now we can get to the fun part of the game. Unlike many of these shooters, you start off with no weapon, and you have to sneak your way around the first few enemies you find. I'm kidding, of course, although there is a little bit of faux stealth in this game. More on that in a bit. Eventually, though, you do get your first weapon, the assault rifle. This thing will quickly become your bread and butter workhorse weapon. It's decently accurate, powerful enough, and has a deep enough mag to kill a few enemies. The first enemies you meet, the riflemen, also carry these. Yeah, Captain Difficulty don't fuck around. The shooting in this game is, on the surface at least, nothing like Doom. Or F.E.A.R for that matter, which is a game that's often compared to this one, for some reason. I wonder why. It takes more care and precision since automatic weapons especially become increasingly inaccurate under sustained fire. So, aptly using short-controlled bursts is a must. Even still, the base form of the 𝘍 is enough to clear a path to the locker room where we can suit up, giving us this wonderful magnum. This thing is honest to god one of my favorite weapons in the game. Accurate, powerful, and can do this to enemies. While using the Magnum does make headshotting enemies much easier, you can still do this with every weapon in the game. Hell, that's part of the reason why the game feels so good to play. Every shot from pretty much every weapon in the game, besides maybe the submachine gun, just feels good. All of the guns kick like fucking mules, and every time you hit something it just kicks up all this kind of debris and smoke and shit like crazy, making every gunfight just this absolute haze of dust and smoking shell casings. It is immensely satisfying. Also satisfying is this game's movement. Before you get the suit, you move this slow, which is not fun. Thankfully, this doesn't last forever, as once you get the suit, you unlock 2 new moves. A simple side shuffle, which is of mild usefulness, but the real shit comes with this slide. This move is just absolutely scuffed in the best possible way. You can gain a ridiculous amount of speed by completing a full slide and then jumping at the end, which gives you another boost of forward momentum. Not only that, but this move can also be used offensively. Sliding into a human enemy will knock them off their feet, allowing you to get an easy kill. That works wonders on the standard riflemen, but not so much on the engineers. They are disciples of the combined shotgun soldiers from Half-Life 2. In layman's terms, they suck and I hate them. Doubly so later on when they get an ability to drop turrets, although that's locked behind an invasion tier. The invasion system is a pretty ingenious method of introducing new enemy mechanics. Every now and then, to throw a curveball at the player, the game will add a new ability to an existing enemy. For instance, the first invasion tier gives enemies the ability to throw grenades, which is obviously no good. And this is just the first tier of like 20. Almost every single enemy in the game gets at least 1, maybe even 2 or 3 different invasion upgrades. These are, from what I'm assuming at least, the way that the developers introduce new mechanics to the player because they thought of them mid-development. Like, they've already got all these levels lying around, and they can't just retool them for a new enemy mechanic that may destroy the balancing, so instead they'll just introduce it later into the game. Or, you know, maybe they just wanted to make the game challenging, I don't know. Speaking of grenades, we do get those too, which are, yeah, they're great, no notes. And I must reiterate, there are at least 20 different invasion tiers. There's so much pain ahead of us. Instead of getting a typical level transition, we get a segmented level system, kinda like in Half-Life. Each level in the game is split up into multiple smaller levels, usually 3 but sometimes even 4 or 5. They're split up by loading screens, but since this game is basically a hacked-together Doom total conversion, the loading times are brief. One big benefit of splitting up the levels like this is that there can be an absolutely ridiculous number of secrets in each level. The first level alone is filled with 20 plus odd secrets for you to collect, and almost all of them are worth finding. Most of them just give you ammo or credits, but you can also get permanent character or weapon upgrades, new alternate fire modes for certain weapons, or an extra 5 hit points added to your max health. And a lot of them are also pretty hard to find. I'm not the greatest secret hunter in the world, but I can usually find like 70-ish% in most games, even on a first-time playthrough. By the end of my first playthrough here, I was barely able to scrape past the 65% mark, and that was easily with another 2 hours of extra wandering around, intentionally looking for secrets. Anyways, the Pathfinder labs introduce us to a few more new mechanics. Security cabinets, which are not usually secrets, but involve finding semi-hidden secondary keycards to get some free loot. Usually extra ammunition or armor. Armor in this game is kinda weird. I don't know exactly how it works, but you can pretty much just keep picking up armor forever, I think. There are 3 different pickups, discounting the single-point armor plate things that you can find just scattered all over the place. And sometimes it gives you 35%, and other times it gives you 50% protection. I think it scales with how much armor you have. Like, the more armor you have, the more protection you get. I don't really know, I never really paid attention to it much, usually because by the time I did, it was gone so fast that it barely even helped. Anyways, more important than security cabinets, we can find the shotgun. And this thing, despite the game giving us access to just ridiculous weapons later on, is my favorite weapon in the game. Here's why. Yeah, there's a reason why the game only lets you carry 30 extra shells for this thing. It makes any other ballistic weapon in the game look like a damn joke. I mean, just look at this shit. This guy got turned inside out and this wasn't even upgraded. This is the stock form. Dear God, this thing is just insane. Makes almost every other weapon in the game look like a joke. The last pretty major thing I'd say is introduced in this level is the security system. Well, the security level system. Across the game, you find various locked doors that are locked with a specific security level. For instance, if you want to unlock the level 2 door, you need the level 2 card. Simple, right? Thankfully, unlike the game's actual keycards, your security cards are permanent character upgrades. Every single one of these doors is usually locking just optional content or character upgrades, So going out of your way to find them isn't necessarily necessary. That was not worded right. So going out of your way to find them isn't really necessary. Although again, they do give you pretty good stuff. Like this capacity upgrade for the assault rifle, which is locked behind the first security door in the game. Gives you 1 extra magazine before you run out of ammo. Not a bad deal. I only ever found capacity upgrades for the assault rifle, never any of the other weapons, although I'm sure they're just buried somewhere deep within secrets in the game. Before we can actually get out of the hospital, we need to lift the security lockdown. Easier said than done, of course, and doubly so since we've reached the second tier of invasion, giving the standard enemies shields. They are relatively easy to flank and can be easily destroyed with sustained gunfire. From here on out, I won't be talking about all of the invasion tiers, mainly because, there's 20 of them, and they don't all do important stuff. Some of them just kind of increase enemy damage without any sort of actual reasoning, so from here on out, most of them will just be glossed over. Once we carve a path through the labs, we can reach the security room where we lift the lockdown and restock an ammo before the upcoming battle. And you might be thinking, what battle? Well, the battle against the Juggernaut. One of the game's few mini-boss style enemies. They're tanky, can deal a ton of damage, and are voiced by Gianni Matrigano, because, he's in everything now for some reason. When he dies, he drops a bunch of weapon parts. More on those soon. With the lockdown lifted, though, we can leave the hospital and enter into firm spoiler territory. If you plan on playing this game, which I've strongly recommended, get off here and go, do that. Are they gone yet? Okay, on to the rest of the game. The next level takes place in these underground utility areas. Kind of boring when compared to the hospital. I mean, those are always fun places to shoot up, and you know what, this is getting cut from the video. Still though, we do get introduced to a few new items pretty quickly. Like another new weapon, the submachine gun. It's kinda if we're being perfectly honest here. Sounds weak, feels weak, and is just, weak. And it uses the same ammo as the assault rifle, and the assault rifle just does a better job of that, so there's no reason to ever use this thing. Even being able to dual wield these things doesn't really save them, they're just kind of boring. To be honest with you here, most of this level, besides a few key areas, is kind of a haze. A bit of a sophomore slump for sure. It's carrying these yellow barrels that are like explosive barrels, but not? I don't know. We do get to see the outside world though for the first time, which is kind of nice. It's raining, of course, as it will be for pretty much the entire game. Not really important. What is important though is the new flying enemies, because now that the levels are big enough to facilitate flying enemies, we just have to have annoying fucking flying enemies. We already had annoying crawling enemies who later on in this very level get an ability to explode from another invasion tier. I know I sound like I'm kind of hating this game right now, and yeah, this level certainly isn't the best second chapter, but from here on out everything is gonna go uphill, trust me. After escaping the roof, we reach the first of our many safe rooms. These are places where you can heal up, and more importantly, upgrade your weapons. As of now, we only have a few weapons to upgrade and only a small number of weapon parts to work with. Upgrades are also split into 5 different tech levels, and at this point we only have the first level unlocked. And there's one thing that you can't buy at the upgrade station, which is the weapon alt-fires. Those can only be found as unique upgrades placed around the levels, usually in secret areas. Some of these are kinda garbage, but others are absolutely overpowered. Take the Magnum's double shot, for instance. Imagine if the Half-Life shotgun's alt-fire was ported over to the Python, and that's basically this. Almost always guarantees a 2-shot kill on any standard enemy in the game. After the first safe room, we loop back around to the Pathfinder Hospital, which is expectedly worse off than it was the last time we were here. Here, though, we can get another valuable addition to the arsenal, the Penetrator. A weapon sure to strike fear into the hearts of many. Nothing really? Damn. Anyways, would you believe that I like this game's version more than the original? Yeah, this thing is awesome. It's more Quake nail gun than it is F.E.A.R penetrator. Its full auto has a pretty nasty amount of spread, at least until you fire it for a sustained amount of time, which actually makes it more accurate. But this thing is still pretty damn satisfying. But besides it, the SMG, a few new enemies like all of the flying bastards, including a new human version who also explode when they die, and yeah, are you sensing a pattern here yet? With all of the enemies who explode when they die for some fucking reason? It's whatever. Because now we get to the city streets of Selaco. Well, not yet, because we have to go through a parking garage. Parking garages are usually 50-50 in terms of enjoyment. Sometimes good, sometimes very, very bad. Thankfully, this one is adequate. Well, mostly good. It does introduce my least favorite enemy in the game, the Enforcers. They're like tankier, faster, just generally more dangerous versions of the standard riflemen. High-value targets at all costs. Oh yeah, and enemies can also throw smoke grenades on demand now, so that's fun. let's leave. Thankfully, the second part of this level is great. It gives us the first taste of the Selaco city streets, and like I said, it is pretty much always raining whenever we're outside in this game. At least until the sky stops working, but that comes later. One of the first things you can do in this level is head into this game development office where you can grab the only upgrade for your PDA, the Burger Flipper minigame. Well, it's not really a minigame, since it's an entirely functional cookie kicker. Oh my fucking god. Since it's an entirely functional cookie clicker clone with tons of upgrades and little features. In the later stages of the game, it's practically the only reason that I open up the PDA. This is also because of another feature introduced in this level. Once we reach the safe house on this map, we can find that it has a new feature, the tram system, which lets you travel back to any safe house in every level you've previously discovered, making backtracking much, much easier. And this is where the Burger Flipper game comes into play. You see, all these trips are done in semi-real time, which means that you have to sit there and just wait for the train to pull into the next station, or you can play the Burger Flipper game for a few minutes, only to find that your burger stocks have probably exponentially multiplied by several dozen times. The game never directly incentivizes you to indulge in this minigame, but because it's actually pretty fun, you're probably just gonna check in on it during downtime anyways. And besides a few achievements, there's nothing really to gain from doing this. Okay, enough ranting about a fucking cookie clicker clone, we should probably get back to the actual game. The rest of this specific level is kind of unimportant besides the whole sky going out, so that's fun. There is this really fun fight at the very end though. Most maps do have one of these big, dramatic, crescendo event-style combat gauntlets. This one has another juggernaut to fight. Get used to seeing these guys more often because as of right now they are the only kind of boss enemy in the game. Still a welcome boss enemy though, since they drop a ton of weapon parts when they die. Well, this isn't actually the end of the level though, I kind of lied. The real end is at this big bar, which has a secret base under it. Our secret base, in fact. That's right, this is Dawn's home, which may be specifically significant for lore reasons, but for gameplay reasons, it's probably more significant because you're gonna get the grenade launcher here. You might be able to find it earlier in a secret, I don't know, I wasn't really looking. This thing is, well, you know, self-explanatory though. It's our main explosive option besides the cryo grenades, standard frags, and the landmines. And speaking of those mines, they're actually my favorite throwable in the game, mainly because you can upgrade them into being a dummy throw explosive frisbee that can absolutely annihilate a small group of enemies. Back to the grenade launcher though, it's good. No complaints. Its main gimmick is being able to switch ammo types between 3 different versions. Standard frag grenades, cryo grenades, which are like our throwable cryo grenades, just, you know, for the grenade launcher, and acid grenades, which I never used. Mainly because I never even hit the ammo limit for them across the entire game. If we're being honest, I probably didn't use this thing as much as I could have. Frag grenades for this thing become pretty common later on, and once you get the direct fire rocket launcher upgrade, this thing can actually become pretty useful. Well, at least in levels where you won't accidentally kill yourself from splash damage. Anyways, what was I down here to actually get? Oh yeah, the demolition charges. For this door right here. And that's how we get to the next level, the 𝘍.𝘌 offices. 𝘍.𝘌, it doesn't matter. Another banger of a level though, mainly because it is just close quarters combat nirvana. It is wonderful. And with our nearly full arsenal now, the game has finally started heating up. The game is done fucking around now. If you can't counter several squads of riflemen augmented by several engineers, heavies, and now plasma troopers and enforcers, then it's time to stop playing the game. Because it is only going to get worse from here. Still though, level's pretty good. Especially the second part, which gets even more cramped than the previous. It did have one thing that kind of, well, we'll get to that later on. Once we get outside, we're granted access to the game's second proper marksman weapon, the aptly named marksman rifle. It's fine, honestly kind of a miss for me. Not a bad weapon by any means, but just kind of boring, mainly because it's in slot 9, which is across the keyboard. Even still, it's also weirdly out of the way on the weapon wheel, so it doesn't get much use there either. Of course, with the addition of a sniper rifle, the game introduces sniper-wielding enemies. They're not terribly dangerous, though, since as is standard by the sniper code, they've had their rifles fitted with laser sights that can be used to very easily discern their location. But after Sniper Alley, the level is basically over. The next level is probably my favorite level in the game. It's a mall level, and while it, like many different locales, can be hit or miss when it comes to video game adaptations, Mall of the Dead from Blood being a great example of a bad video game mall level. But this one is actually quite good. Absolute fucking ballbuster for sure though, it just took me an embarrassing number of reloads before I could get a proper foothold in this level. This opening area is just packed with ill-placed goons, especially this guy here, just fuck this guy. And fuck the bastard who put him there, it's just, why would you put him? Besides that though, this level is great. I love a good mall because it's basically just free world building. You get to see all kinds of the in-universe brands the developers can think of, and many of them are just developer gags or Easter eggs, which is always fun. Like the toy store, which sells Teddy 13, which is a bastardized version of everyone's favorite incarcerated influencer. Anyways, really there isn't much to talk about this map, it's all just good fun. The mall is split into 3 sections: the main center wing, the north wing, and the south wing. The south wing being one of the hardest sections in this game, mainly because I am just absolute garbage at this game and I walked into the same ambush like 25 times. Hell, this level is basically designed to be a filler level between us and the plant factory because we need to do, something there. Something related to blowing it up, that's all I know. But that comes later. For right now, we actually have to, get there. Of course, because we're in space, growing plants isn't exactly something that's terribly easy. So now there's also a plant cloning facility. Sounds pretty good on paper, but that isn't exactly the case. For right now, though, we walk in to find the place pretty much abandoned. And hell, it looks like it's been that way for quite a while. Stylistically, this is easily my favorite in the entire game. Unfortunately, this does not extend to the gameplay. Case in point, Jonathan. This fucking barrel actually cost me at least half an hour of hair-pulling torment. You see, in an earlier level, we get introduced to this pressure plate mechanic. You have to have a heavy enough object to set up the pressure plate, and this is usually linked to a door opening. In this level, though, one of these doors is linked up to multiple plates, which means that you have to find 2 barrels to open the door. One of those barrels is easy enough to get, but the other one is the aptly named Jonathan. This guy sucks because every 5 feet that you push him causes a squad of enemies to show up, just, to keep you on your toes. This is fine until the game spawns a squad of 4 enforcers, which for reasons we've already discussed, isn't very good. Yeah, these 4 enemies cost me half an hour of playtime that I could have spent doing, something productive, like eating glass or pulling my fingernails out. Really, that's the only highlight in this map, just this one absolute ballbuster of a section. The next map, though, is where things get interesting, because now we're in the heart of the plant facility, and this is where the game pulls the whoops, all flood card. You get a gas mask, which prevents you from healing back up to minimum health, which is something that is actually detrimental to me because I am just not good at this game. Fine, whatever. I'm sure that these zombies won't cause too much of a problem, and for a while, they don't. They're certainly annoying, but not hard to kill. That is until we get the last 3 or 4 explosive charges. And the game decides to pull the age-old spawn 50 enemies because 4 isn't enough trick. And trust me, it worked. Many, many times in fact, just an embarrassing number of times. By the 6th or 7th attempt though, I had this down to an exact science. Run around, use the plasma rifle, because yeah, we have one of those now, it's pretty good, no complaints. Penetrator, shotgun, really anything I have ammo for. The game does give you plenty of ammo here, as well as in pretty much every level of the game, but if you use one weapon too much, you're still bound to run dry eventually. Then, if you're very lucky, the game will just let you leave, or just kill all the enemies, but it sure felt like fucking luck when I was doing this. Let's just leave this place. The ending set piece is one of the few really redeeming qualities it has. It's very cathartic. Thankfully, we are now onto the final level of the game. Well, final full level anyways. This is it, the final level. Well, kinda, sorta. You remember how I talked about security level? Yeah, that came back to bite me in the ass here. Now, while yes, this part is technically optional, it is still highly recommended. By me anyways. Because you do get the most powerful weapon in the game. You see, you need to be clearance level 6, which means you have to have picked up every single security card in the game thus far. Luckily for me, I had only missed one, and it was in a not terribly out of the place area in a different level. Kind of dickish, but to be fair, this entire next part is optional. But it is worth it because you get one hell of a final gauntlet to fight through. You see, this penultimate level is kind of a hub with 4 separate mini-levels. Well, mini-level is a little disingenuous since each one can easily last you 30 minutes plus. Each level has a color-coded key that you need to unlock this big elevator at the back of the facility, which will take us to the big gun. And we want that, everyone wants that. This is easier said than done though, since every level is a test of the player's abilities. You can tackle them in any order, but the first one I did was the red sector, or manufacturing. And surprise, it's full of robotics. I'm not going to go into much detail in each of these because they're mostly all just combat. Manufacturing was primarily robots and some shoddy platforming, easily the most boring of the 4. The purple sector, or warehouse storage, was a little bit more cumbersome for me, mainly because I got my ass kicked repeatedly by all of these snipers coming around these long stretches. Made me break out the marksman rifle for the first time in a while. There was also this big juggernaut fight at the end, which was kind of fun. Whatever. The third sector, though, the office complex, is easily the best one, just hands down. Due in no small part to this absolute butt clencher of a fight where you take a cargo lift down to the purple sector and you have to fight off like 20 waves of enemies. And you have to fight multiple juggernauts. Not at the same time, mind you, but still very quickly in succession. Not an easy fight by any means. The rest of the level, though, is kind of a non-issue, so we're just gonna move on. Finally, the blue sector, or R&D. This one was just annoying for me, primarily because I had been playing for like an hour and a half straight at this point and my brain was just mush. So this one ambush here got me at least a dozen times. I'm not even joking, I spent like 20 minutes here trying not to get my ass kicked. But with the last key collected, we can head back to the lobby and take the elevator down to retrieve the prototype weapon. And yes, that's a railgun. And let me tell you, it is glorious. Probably one of the best I've used in a game. It doesn't beat Quake 2, but damn it if this thing isn't pretty fucking close. You can't upgrade it, but whatever, you don't really need to. It's already plenty powerful. Anyways, we are now onto the actual final level, which is sadly kind of boring. Starts off with some tunnels, which was never a good way to put your best foot forward, but whatever. It does get better at the very end, though, in this last final arena, which is actually pretty good. Again, it doesn't lead with its best foot, sending in flying grunts and annoying flying robot enemies, who are like, you know, the crawler mines, except they fly now and they're harder to hit. Yeah, they're no fun. But the rest of the fight is much better. Just an absolute bloodbath of epic proportions. I mean, they throw everything at you, including not one, not two, not three, but four, yes, count them, 4 juggernauts, at the same time now. Not a terrible final boss, but I suppose wait, there's no boss? Yeah, that kinda sucks. All that build up to end on a fizzle with a teaser of more. Of course, that doesn't make or break the experience for me, but it is certainly annoying. The game teases us with this cool mech saying, yeah, you're fucked, but I could have easily taken it. Probably. I mean, I still had plenty of railgun ammo. Regardless, that is episode 1 of Selaco, and yeah, it's pretty good. Even at full price, worth 24 of your hard-earned dollars, I still think it is well worth it. This campaign, even if it isn't all the game has to offer, is still pretty damn solid. That and there's also plenty of mutators and side modes that can occupy many other playthroughs. And like I said at the beginning, I think I found maybe 65% of the secrets total. Not bad for a first playthrough, but there's still plenty more to search for. That and the core gameplay loop is so good that I'm already in the middle of doing a second playthrough at the time of writing this script. It's easy to see that this game is just an absolute labor of love. A testament to the idea that a small, passionate team of developers can do something and make something like this on tech as old as the shit your dad actually played on. An easy, very, very easy glowing recommendation from me here. And yeah, that's all for me. For now at least. Next year I have some pretty big plans. You'll see.